Great. Well, we're going to get started. We have a lot to cover today. So first of all, again, hello and welcome. My name is Julie Schumacher-Cohen, and I serve as a member of the Catholic Advisory Council of Churches for Middle East Peace. And I'm really glad to be co-moderating today's panel with Jeff Aboud, who is chair of the council. And he and I will be trading off as we introduce the webinar and its speakers. We're really honored to have with us two speakers who are going to be introducing more fully in just a moment. And then we'll also be facilitating the Q&A that will invite all of you as participants to ask your questions as well. So first of all, just for those who may not be aware, Churches for Middle East Peace, or CMEP as we call it, is a coalition of more than 30 national church communions and organizations working to encourage U.S. policies that actively promote a comprehensive resolution to conflicts in the Middle East. And then the Catholic Advisory Council is a part of that work. We focus specifically on engagement with U.S. Catholics to really bolster Catholic engagement in the search for justice and peace in Palestine, Israel, and to accompany Christian communities in the Holy Land. Today's webinar is the first in a series of three that is going to focus attention on how faith-based institutions in the Holy Land are responding to the profound challenges faced by Palestinians under bombardment, siege, military occupation, and ongoing violence and oppression. Today's topic will focus on the dire conditions that persist in Gaza and the West Bank, and we have this opportunity to hear from two experts and individuals about the health and humanitarian realities that are facing all Palestinians, whether Christian or Muslim. We will also, at the end of the webinar, preview a little bit the two other webinars to come in this series. So again, we're glad to have with us two leaders working on the front lines of humanitarian and justice efforts, Shireen Khamis from Caritas Baby Hospital, who's joining us today from Bethlehem, and Dr. Greg Shea, an American Catholic doctor who recently served in Gaza and is going to talk about his experience there. They're both going to share about the work that they have done, the work that is ongoing to heal and to maintain hope amidst what is really a catastrophe. We'll gain a better understanding of what's currently happening on the ground, the challenges and barriers to providing healthcare and humanitarian aid, and also consider the wider context of the necessity for a permanent ceasefire. And in the long term, the work that we do here at CMEP and as the Catholic Advisory Council, which is to promote a just peace for all Palestinians and Israelis. I do want to note that as we come together today, it has been over 580 days since the horrific attack by Hamas on October 7th, 2023. And since then, every day since then, Israel's indiscriminate military assault that has wrought widespread devastation on Gaza. More than 52,000 Palestinians have been killed. An estimated 70% of those are women and children. We've seen mass displacement, starvation, lack of medical access, and the destruction of housing that has made Gaza uninhabitable for many of its civilian population. And as of today, it's been more than 2 months since Israel has allowed food, medicine, or other aid to get into Gaza. And then in the West Bank, Israel's longstanding occupation has become further entrenched with increasing settler and military violence, restricted movement, home demolitions. And in the last couple of months, more than 40,000 Palestinians have been displaced. This is the most since 1967. So in both places in Gaza and in the West Bank, the work of faith-based organizations and individuals to address the needs of the Palestinian people has only grown more difficult. And so again, it's more important than ever that we hear from our speakers today. So I'm going to introduce Shireen, and then I'll pass it to Jeff to introduce Dr. Shea. They're each going to share opening comments, and then again, we'll open it up for Q&A. And if you have questions as you go along, as you hear comments, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll just be kind of collecting them as we go. So I've had the pleasure to get to know Shireen over the past year. She and I were actually on another webinar on a similar topic last May. And of course, it's sad to say that things have not gotten better, but really become even more severe since then. Shireen currently serves as the marketing and communication manager at Caritas Baby Hospital in Bethlehem. She plays a pivotal role there in enhancing the hospital's visibility, engaging donors, and overseeing media relations. Prior to this, she held key positions with Catholic Relief Services, St. John Eye Hospital, and other local and international NGOs. As a seasoned communications and development professional, she brings nearly 20 years of experience across the humanitarian and healthcare sectors. She holds a master's degree in public administration from the Dubai School of Government in cooperation with the Harvard Kennedy School, and a bachelor's degree in business administration with a minor in marketing from Bethlehem University. She has been recognized for her leadership, adaptability, and deep commitment to social justice, and has a proven track record in building and managing local and international partnerships and in advocating for child health and the empowerment of civil society in Palestine. So again, so glad to have Shireen, and I'm going to turn things to Jeff to introduce Dr. Shea, and then we'll get our program underway.
Thanks, Julie. I'm Jeff Aboud. I'm the chair of the Catholic Advisory Council for CMEP, and I want to echo Julie's welcome to have everyone on board join us today. So thank you. This will be recorded and posted online later in case you'd like to pass it along to people you think that might be interested. But it's my big honor, really, to introduce Dr. Shea. Dr. Greg Shea is a pediatric pulmonologist, so he specializes in lung diseases for children. He lives in California, where he retired in 2014. Since then, he's worked primarily in refugee camps in 36 poor medically resourced countries. He's been to Gaza. He's worked there 3 times, with the last time being in October, just this past October. Then he worked in the pediatric ward of the Nasser Hospital for 4 weeks. This is the hospital that was just bombed yesterday, again, unfortunately. He is a practicing Catholic, and he's had the opportunity to visit the main Catholic church in Gaza, Holy Family, twice, but most recently in January of 23. He'll be sharing some slides with us later that, since some of them are of a medical nature, we'd just like to let you know that some of them might be kind of graphic, just as a warning. And later there is a wonderful interview with Dr. Shea in National Catholic Reporter that you might want to check out when you have time. So I'll turn it back to Julie.
Thank you. So Shireen, we're excited and appreciative to have you here today and welcome your opening comments.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Jeff, and hello, everyone. I'm happy to join you from Bethlehem. So I prepared a brief about the situation in the West Bank. I have to read some parts because there is a lot to say and there is a lot to tell. So the health situation in the West Bank remains dire due to the occupations, ongoing violations, and attacks against the civilians. Along with restrictions on movement, the situation is further worsened by the long-standing fiscal crisis faced by the Palestinian Authority, intensified by the Israelis' withholding of tax revenues meant for the occupied Palestinian territory since October 7, 2023. Regarding the available services, I want to focus on the Ministry of Health facilities as the main provider. We are talking in most of the areas in the West Bank, the MOH primary care clinics and outpatient specialty clinics are now operating 2 days per week, and hospitals are operating at approximately 70% capacity. This is according to the WHO, and this is related to the operational and challenges, movement restrictions, and again, the financial crisis that the PA faces. There is also the UNRWA, which is an important health provider for the Palestinian refugees in the West Bank. The UNRWA has faced significant operational challenges due to the recent Israeli legislations. These laws, started in October 2024, have profoundly impacted UNRWA's ability to deliver essential health services in the OPT, including the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza Strip. If we are talking about the NGO sector where I work, for example, the situation can be described as better, especially if the NGO facility does not depend on the Palestinian Authority for referrals. So if it is more financially independent, or if it is has more reliable donors, then the situation can be considered okay. Now, regarding the operational challenges, here I'm talking about all types of health facilities. Of course, we have a problem with the resulted from the movement restrictions. Staff, in many cases, are unable to reach their work or the health facilities they work at. And here we hear about stories of having very long shifts, working shifts, so as staff would not need to go to their home they would need to go less often to their home. So they will be they need to face less checkpoints or be less have less chances of being attacked by the settlers on their way home. Also, by working for longer shifts, they think that they would save more the transportation money, which is highly needed in this very hard economic situation. We have also the importing challenges. Israeli authorities have limited the entry of vital medical supplies and medication, worsening the region's healthcare challenges. From our experience in CBH, we have seen increasing number of children hospitalized after suffering, for example, from rotavirus. This is associated with disturbed routine vaccinations as a result of delayed approval by the Israeli authorities for the UNICEF to obtain the vaccine in the OPT. This is just one small example. But also we hear from the government about very, very critical medication for the cancer and kidney dialysis that have been hindered or stopped or delayed. Regarding the movement restrictions, the heightened security measures, including curfews, increased checkpoints, have severely restricted the movement of Palestinians within the West Bank. These restrictions embed access to healthcare facilities, especially for emergency services and patients requiring specialized care. The United Nations Populated Fund, UNFPA, reported that such limitations have significantly impacted the ability of pregnant women and other vulnerable groups to reach medical services. Here we are talking about around 900 checkpoints in the West Bank, only in the West Bank. I want to highlight here also that since October 7, we in Caritas Baby Hospital, for example, lost around 10,000 patients who could not come to the hospital between October 7 and December 31st, 2024. So we are just a small facility. Here also I want to talk, maybe later I can give you examples of patients and type of patients. I don't want to be long in my introduction. In terms of children's well-being, as we work with children, I wanted to highlight this. At least 224 children have been killed by Israeli forces or settlers since January 2023. And here I want to highlight that the escalation of violence started before October 7. 2023 from the beginning was a very violent year, and we could see and note the escalation in the West Bank especially. Accounting this number, 224 children, accounts for nearly half of the children killed in the West Bank and East Jerusalem since 20 years. So only in the last 2 years, half of the children that were killed in the last 20 years were killed in the last 2 years. Also, according to Doctors Without Borders, a dramatic decline in children's mental health have been observed, noting symptoms such as severe anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. These conditions manifest in various ways, including nightmares, bedwetting, and heightened aggression. Attacks on healthcare and healthcare workers and facilities. There has been significant increase in attacks on healthcare infrastructure and personnel in the West Bank. It was not only in Gaza. This is, of course, it's not as much or as severe as in Gaza Strip, but we are witnessing attacks on the health workers and health facilities. According to Doctors Without Borders, between October 23 and December 24, there have been recorded around 700 attacks on healthcare in West Bank, with hospitals and healthcare structures often are besieged by military forces. Also, there are around 160 health workers in the Israeli prisons. So this is for my introduction.
Thank you so much, Shireen, and I'm sure we'll have more questions to ask when we get into the next Q&A phase. So, Dr. Shea, if you'd like to share your opening comments and slide. I know you have some slides as well.
And you're muted. There you go. And you're muted, Dr. Shea.
If you click on play, it should get rid of the rest of the, there you go. And then if you can unmute so we make sure we hear you. We might be able to, I don't know if we can unmute you from the tech side of things from CMEP, or if Dr. Shea has to do it himself. I don't know if you can prompt him to unmute himself.
I can share that these first two slides are from Gaza City prior to last October.
Yes, as we were talking earlier, Dr. Shea has been in Gaza 3 times, twice before October 7th, and then once in the aftermath this last October. Maybe you should stop sharing it. Let's just make sure we can actually hear you. So if CMEP can prompt the stop share, and then we can at least make sure we can hear, we can try to get him to unmute. Okay, let's see now.
Okay.
There we go.
I'm very, very sorry.
No. Do you want to try, since you're on now, do you want to try sharing again? Because you had, yeah, let's do it that way. And I also want to just say, in terms of, since we have a moment, it was really important for us to put both the West Bank and Gaza into today's webinar, because Gaza is so severe, and as we're going to talk about, we're going to see that, but also the West Bank, I think, gets forgotten. And as we know, as Shireen is talking about, so many of the things that are happening in Gaza have now started to also happen in the West Bank, and they're not new. And I appreciate you underscoring that, Shireen, that this is not a new, many of these issues they're not a new phenomenon. They've just gotten even worse. So again, thank you for us to be able to have both of these issues today.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, you guys can hear me.
Yes.
So I'm just going to show a few general pictures, and I'll be talking. I might be talking a little rapidly, but this will be recorded. So this is what Gaza used to look like before the war. This is the fishing port.
We're not seeing the slides now, though. Can you share them again? We hear you, so if you share again, that seemed to work fine. So if you try it again, I think we'll be okay.
Okay, let's go to here. Now you can't see it, right?
Yeah, we can hear you so far.
We can hear you. We can't see the slides. Or if you want, we can try for me to share them. There you go.
Okay. Now
Yep. You press play.
Hey,
Yep.
we got both.
There you go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm very, very sorry about that. Okay, so this is what Gaza used to look like. If you, on the right of the slide is where the Mediterranean Ocean is. And Gaza used to be a nice resort where a lot of Egyptians and even Israelis used to go to Gaza because they had such nice beaches. This is just a picture of the only Latin Catholic Church, Latin rites, in Gaza, and this is called Holy Family Church. You've probably heard about this in the news because Pope Francis, since the first day of the war, has called the priest here every day, and they have a community of people there. So I've been on 3 trips to Gaza in the past. The first 2 were before the war when I was teaching how to do baby resuscitation and also setting up a cystic fibrosis clinic. And this was done at Rantisi Children's Hospital in Gaza City. The war started in October 23. First month or the second month after the start of the war, Rantisi Children's Hospital was bombed by the Israelis. And the third time I went to Gaza was in October of 24, and that was at Nasser Hospital, which is in the south. This is from Rantisi Hospital. When I was there, I was teaching the doctors how to do flexible bronchoscopy and also taking care of patients with cystic fibrosis. This is a 19-year-old with cystic fibrosis. He's the size of about an 8-year-old. And this is even before the war. There was a blockade on a lot of the specialty expensive cystic fibrosis medicines to get into Gaza. In Europe and in the United States, patients with cystic fibrosis live into their 40s and 50s. In Gaza, they die by the time they're 14. So I was there trying to set up a cystic fibrosis clinic so we could try to update the medicines that they're using, and also I set up protocols for taking care of the patients. I won't go into what Palestine itself is. There's 2 parts, the West Bank and Gaza. The West Bank is closer to Jerusalem, and there's freedom of movement within the West Bank, and some people from the West Bank can go to Jerusalem. There's 3.2 million people in the West Bank, 2.3 million people in Gaza. Gaza is only 25 miles by 4.5 miles, and there's 2.3 million people there. It's completely walled off from the rest of Israel. You can see down in the lower left near Egypt, that's where the Gaza Strip is. It's a very small area compared to the rest of Israel. And you can see where the West Bank's located. So 50% of the population of Gaza is less than 14 years of age. So it's full of children. And only 6% of the population is over 55. Most of the people are unemployed because they're not allowed to do any manufacturing. And there's, even before the war, there's been no factories or supplies coming in order to have a business. 80% of the Gazans live under the poverty line. This is before the war. And over 1 million Gazans are classified as moderately to severely food insecure. This is before the war. Even before the war, the Israelis were restricting how much food can go into Gaza. On a good day before the war, electricity is only available about 8 hours a day. The rest of the day, it's either solar or it's mostly solar or generators. Before the war, there were 150 desalination plants. If you dig a well in Gaza, you cannot drink that water. It's full of salt, and it also has sewerage in it because the Israelis have blocked the water supplies and the sewerage system. So the Israeli blockade started in 2007, and since that time, Gaza totally relies on foreign aid for survival. So even before the war, 500 trucks a day come into Gaza, bringing in medicine, supplies, water, and food. $600 million of aid comes into Gaza from UNRWA or other UN agencies. And even before the war, over 50% of all the medicines in Gaza were donated by foreign countries and foreign NGOs. So they can only afford to pay for about 50% of the medications themselves. However, even with all those dismal things before the war, the literacy rate is 98%. About 50% of the population will attend university or trade schools. And in 2020, there were 20 colleges and 8 universities, 2 medical schools. There are 700,000 children, school-aged children in Gaza, and they've not been in school for the last 19 months. So before the war, there were 38 hospitals in Gaza, and many of these were outstanding specialty hospitals, oncology hospitals, rehab hospitals, neurosurgery hospitals, and they had 3,000 hospital beds. Despite that, life expectancy is lower, and the maternal mortality and infant mortality is higher than the surrounding regions. I'm also going to mentioning that there were 7 dialysis centers before the war, and I'll tell you what happened during the war. So before the war, the vaccination rate was 97%. That's like just like the United States. So the Gazans care a lot about healthcare. Now, what's happened since the war started? Since October of 2023, 53,000 Palestinians have died and another 118 have been injured. It's only an estimate that it's the 53,000 have been killed because there's so many more people under the rubble and in mass graves, and they keep finding mass graves all over the place. 16,000 children have died. Most of the people who've died are women and children. 212 journalists have been killed deliberately so that they could not spread the information about the genocide. And about 1,500 healthcare workers have been killed, including 160 doctors. Since the start of the war, there have been 4,500 amputations, mostly from trauma, from falling buildings, or from bombings as well. 920 children have had amputations and 540 women. The Israelis blew up the prosthetic clinics in Gaza early on in the war. So this is what Gaza looks like now. About 90% of all the buildings have been totally destroyed. 91% of the households now in Gaza have water insecurity. That means that they have no water at all. They have to go to trucks or to central areas to collect their water every day and bring it back to their tent. Only 23% of the hospitals are partially functioning. And there's really only 3 hospitals that are still working in Gaza. 2 were bombed yesterday. Now, 92% of all the children less than 2 years of age and breastfeeding women are not meeting their nutritional requirements. So 90% of the buildings are destroyed, all the roads are destroyed. Over 1 million of the children are in desperate need of mental health. Now, surgical-wise, you know that there's a shortage of anesthesia in Gaza. It's been all over the news. And they've been doing surgery with no anesthesia. They've been doing C-sections with no anesthesia. They've been doing amputations of children's limbs with no anesthesia. And at this time, they say about 15,000 patients are in need of medical evacuation for further medical care. No medical supplies at all have gone in the last 10 weeks. No medical supplies or food. So before the war, the hospital I worked in, Khan Yunis, had 400 patients. Now it has 660. It used to be a full tertiary hospital. When the Israelis invaded in February of 24, They completely destroyed everything in the hospital. They destroyed all the electricity. They took all the solar panels. They destroyed all the medical equipment and monitors. There are no laboratories. They burnt the renal dialysis building. This is the outside of Nasser Hospital. Looks much like the one after the bombing yesterday. This is in the foreground. Those are all ambulances. When they invaded the hospital, they destroyed all the ambulances in the southern part of Gaza so that patients would not be able to get into the hospital. And this is the dialysis building. So in all the hospitals that they've invaded, the first thing they destroy is the medical records. Then they destroy all the medical monitors, round up doctors, put them in jail. And then in this area to the right of where these ambulances are, after the Israelis left, they found mass graves with 200 patients. And actually, there were 200 patients in the mass graves who had their arms tied behind their back and were shot. So right now, there's no public health left in Gaza. At Nasser Hospital, there's no EEG machine. There's no cath labs. You can't do anything if anyone comes in with a heart attack. They only have 12% of their normal formulary. In the last 2 weeks that I was there in October, we had no formula. So we had a baby hospital with no formula. There's no painkillers, no anesthetics. We had no small needles for doing biopsies. There's only one pathologist left in Gaza, and there's only one plastic surgeon left in Gaza. So this is the pediatric ICU in Nasser Hospital. What happened after it was all destroyed? MSF came in and rebuilt this area. And this is when the trucks were still coming through. So 95% of the people in Gaza are living in tents. They have no running water. They have no electricity, no bathrooms, open sewerage. Usually you have about 10 people living in your tent because they have large extended families, and a lot of nuclear families even have 6 to 8 children. In the tents, it's dusty in the summer and it's just pure wood, pure mud in the winter. They have open wood fires. Occasionally somebody will have a solar panel. So nobody really has a job. So most people just sell things and they rely totally on aid. Each day, one of the main things is, are you going to have enough water? Because there's a shortage of water. And there are no menstrual products. The children don't have any clothes or shoes because things haven't been able to get in. And there's no soap or hand sanitizer. This is where what the houses look like now. You can see that these people actually went back and are living in their house because it's at least a roof over their house, over their heads when it's raining. Everyone totally relies on handouts of food, such as World Central Kitchen or UNRWA. And this is what the neighborhoods look like now. People just live in tents, tent after tent. You can see the Mediterranean in the distant background. This is what the refugee camps look like. The sewage just flows between the tents. So the reason I mentioned all the things about the water and the sewerage is because the hospital itself suffers because there's so many sick kids because of the poor hygiene. When I was at Nasser Hospital, we had 40 beds in the hospital, pediatric beds, and we had 140 patients. We also had 140 mothers with their 140 patients. And so we had 40 beds and 280 people. Many of the beds would have 5 kids in it with 3 mothers. The hallways were lined with patients with all kinds of diseases. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in the hospital, we had no soap and no hand sanitizer. So in between patients, I brought hand sanitizers that I would use and give out to people. But on a general basis, there's a blockade against soap and hygiene products from the Israelis. When I was there, we had no microbiology lab either. Um, So this is, you can see the patients are lined up and down the hospital. This is in the hallways. Each night we would have about 40 new admissions into the hospital. And the problem is once somebody got better, it was hard to send them home because a lot of them don't have refrigerators to have their medicine refrigerated. They can't really change dressings because they don't have running water. And this is where we do our medical care on a blanket in the middle of the floor. So we did have all the surgical trauma. We didn't have as much surgical trauma when I was there. We did have a few mass casualties. But what happened when I was there is that I saw mostly children with chronic infection. So none of the children have had adequate protein, fruits or vegetables, or vitamins. And they had problems fighting off infection because they were so malnourished. So this was even before the last 10 weeks. Every kid I saw in the hospital was malnourished. This is a baby who was in a tent that the Israelis bombed the tent, and everybody in the family was killed, but the baby lived. And then there was nowhere for the baby to go. We finally found a distant family member who could take care of the child. So when you have malnutrition, you can't fight off infection. And because of that, all the children in the hospital had impetigo, scabies, skin abscesses. Every night we would get about 6 children admitted with meningitis. And since we didn't have a microbiology lab, we didn't know what kind of meningitis it was. Of course, you can imagine if you're living in a tent and somebody gets RSV or influenza or whooping cough, then the whole tent gets it. And then pretty soon the whole group of tents gets it. And the hospital is just full of children with pneumonia, meningitis, hepatitis, one case of polio. And frequently we didn't have the necessary antibiotics that we needed.
Dr. Shea, I just was going to give you a kind of 2-minute warning so that we
know.
make sure that you can have we can get some questions too. I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't want to interrupt you at all because this is really,
Right.
really important information.
So this was sort of our typical kids with impetigo, chest infections, children with chronic disease. The only other thing I wanted to mention is the mothers. Oh, oncology. So when I was at Rantisi, when I was at Nasser Hospital, we had 8 new cases of cancer when I was there. So we're having a big surge in cancer, and we think it's from the white phosphorus, the asbestos burning, and all the toxic chemicals that's being poured out onto the children. So I had 8 new cases of cancer, had a 13-year-old with ovarian cancer, 2 kids with kidney tumors, 6 kids with leukemia. This is a patient with who had leukemia, came in with a fever, and died of her leukemia in 2 weeks. So the last thing I wanted to mention was maternity. The moms have had no prenatal care or prenatal vitamins, and they're basically malnourished. They have a 300% increase in miscarriages, and many of the babies are born with intrauterine growth retardation. And now what we're seeing is lots of children born with spinal cord deformities because they don't get any folate during their pregnancy. So I'll stop here, and you will have the slides probably on when we send out the seminar. This is a school, and the school this is where the people live now. So nobody's been in school for 18 months. Okay, so now we're going to open up for questions. So you can
So we're going to take off the slides.
Yes.
If CMEP can help us with that. in the background. I think that worked. Okay, so now we're all back. So thank you both. Obviously, what you shared is really disturbing. For those of us in the United States, we know that our U.S. policies are supporting what the Israeli government is doing that's affecting the Palestinian people in both the West Bank and Gaza. So I also want to always lift up the fact that there is much that we can do as advocates, and we'll kind of return to that too before we close. But we wanted to open up the floor to questions from from all of you as participants. You can use again the chat tool or the Q&A function, either one. I guess I'll start just in terms of we all know that, of course, Pope Francis passed away, and we have a new pope, and we're glad that Pope Leo has already called for a Gaza ceasefire, and he talked about the aid needing to get in, which we know has been blocked now for since March 2nd. At the end of in the last few months of Pope Francis's life, which was revealed after he died, he donated his Pope Mobile to become a mobile health clinic. And I just wonder if there's anything you want to reflect on in terms of the ministry that he had of calling the Gaza Church and just bringing attention to what's been happening in Palestine. But if you have, so either both of you, that was one question I wanted to ask.
Well, I think that, one Pope Mobile is not going to do much. I think it's symbolic, of course, but it also draws attention to the area. It's interesting that the new American ambassador to Israel considers himself a very religious man, is totally against Gaza and totally against aid going into Gaza. And so you can see both sides of how religion plays a role in what's going on in the Middle East. But I think that it's encouraging that the Pope called every day to that Catholic Church and talked to that priest. And now I hope that Pope Leo is able to continue the concern, and also for what's going on in the West Bank. The West Bank is turning into what Gaza is now.
Shireen, did you want to comment on that?
Just briefly, yes, it is symbolic, but I think also we need to hear more voices from the voice of leaders. Like, we hear the people screaming all over the world and going for demonstrations, but less leaders. And Pope Francis is a great model of how leaders can influence hundreds of thousands or millions of people around the world, and remind them that Christianity, our faith, is about humanity and is about respecting the human life. So that's it, yeah.
We have one question here that's saying, I have many friends and family members in the U.S. who are somewhat immune to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza because they believe it's inevitable in order to destroy Hamas. Do you have any advice for how to address this in a non-emotional, factual way? We'll say send them this recording when it's posted. But also, so that's one question, is kind of how to break through this numbness or inability for many Americans to face what's happening in Gaza. And then she also has a question about specifically the maternal health and mortality. And if you have expired supplies, are there any ways to donate them? So first, how do you break in and get people to understand what's happening? And then second, are there any ways to donate supplies?
Yeah, it's hard to get people to understand because they keep going back to, well, what about Hamas? And, we have nothing, these 18,000 children who are dead, they're not Hamas. They have nothing to do with Hamas. And when I was in the hospitals, I've been all over Rantisi Hospital, Nasser Hospital, El Shifa Hospital, European Hospital. I never saw any military people when I was there. And so we're talking about taking care of the children and taking care of people who are sick, which we do in every war. And so it's just basic Christianity 101 to help people who are hungry, thirsty, or suffering. And you just have to look above it and let the politicians deal with the political situation. What was the
Shireen,
second?
did you want to comment on that?
I think, yes, it's not easy to convince anyone of anything because there is a huge propaganda. There is the political analysis that we hear every day. I just want to remind people that yesterday President Trump shook the hands of Shara in Syria, who was wanted. And in short, I want to say that I think it's a political thing rather than a humanitarian thing. You know, it's. I'm sorry, I can't explain it well, but in few words, I think that the world will change in one day, but it's according to the political decision, which is very sad, you know, because in between many innocent lives will be lost. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear enough. I don't
No,
know.
I think you're very clear, and I think we hear a lot of people saying, many people will say that they were against what's happening in Gaza, which is obvious, which has been shared by many experts to be a genocide, but they're not. They haven't done it yet, and so as we always, it's never too late to be against the things that are wrong. The other question was just about: is there any way to donate supplies? And I see we have some more questions in the chat.
Yeah, the supplies aren't getting in. I have cystic fibrosis medications that have been in Amman, Jordan since last November, waiting to go in, lined up with all the trucks. And so really nothing's getting in right now.
So then let me ask you another question. What can people here in the U.S. actually do to help? What would you guys recommend? Because the Catholic Advisory Council is to promote policies that lead to the permanence of the Christians there, and not just the Christians, but all Palestinians. Are there any concrete things you guys can recommend that we do? I know Caritas Baby Hospital has a foundation here in the U.S. that people can donate to, but what else would you recommend, Shireen and Greg, for both of you? Thanks.
Well, if you want to support Gaza in general, the people in Gaza, I think one of the biggest things that would help would be to donate money for food, such as World Central Kitchen or UNRWA or the different NGOs. I worked with Med Global that will get food into Gaza and food to the children.
Thanks. Shireen?
Yes, and strategically we need to find justice and peace. We need to have a just peace in the region. We cannot have talks and negotiations and on the ground keep on the occupation and keep the violations and oppression for another people, for the Palestinians. So advocacy and influencing your external policies.
Have there been any indications you guys have seen from the presidents being there right now? Any positive signs?
Well, he went to the Middle East, but he's not going to Israel or to Gaza. I mean, the Pope sent his envoy into Gaza to go to Holy Family Church. So Westerners can get into Gaza if they go through the right things. They just don't want to face it. My senator, I've talked with him and write him letters, send him pictures, and he's not really willing. Most people are afraid to stand up against Israel, especially the politicians, because otherwise they're just going to lose in the next election because the money will be put against them. The other thing, if you want to donate to the Catholic Church there, you could donate it to the Latin Patriarch in Jerusalem, and they will send supplies or medicine to the church. But there's much more there. I think that just getting food there will make a difference.
And I just want to underscore, you actually addressed one of the questions, which was saying that people are afraid to speak up because there's so much conflation between opposing what Israel is doing and anti-Semitism. And I just want to underscore that we as Catholics and as Christians can absolutely oppose the policies of the state of Israel and do that in a way that, of course, is in no way anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic. And unfortunately, especially in the United States, which with the way that the repression of the protest has gone on, that has been those two things have been conflated. You can't be for solidarity for freedom and human rights for the Palestinians without being somehow accused of anti-Semitism. And I think that's extremely unfortunate and really problematic. And so I just want to encourage, as Dr. Shea said, that we need to still work against that, even though it is the context within the United States. We have another question here from a medical perspective. If tomorrow the genocide stopped and aid groups were allowed back in, how long would it take for the Gazan population to reach pre-genocide health levels? So how long will these health effects be felt for? And I would add to that we're seeing even now, just in the New York Times yesterday, there was a admission by Israeli officers that the starvation levels in Gaza are already, that basically it's here now, or it's about to happen. And I understand that means obviously that people are already very malnourished. So maybe speak a little bit about that impact. And even if everything were to be, a ceasefire and the aid is in, what does it really look like for people to get to a healthy place?
Right. Well, mentally, the children will never be in a healthy place. They're going to have PTSD for the rest of their lives. And the children now are extremely small. They aren't developing normally neurologically. And so some of that is not going to change with nutrition. In older people, it can change. But I think it probably would take 5 years before they'd be back to where they were before.
Shireen, do you want to comment on that in terms of even what could make the West Bank get to a better place, or also I know that you have, and you also mentioned before we got on the call that before you could go from the West Bank to Gaza, and of course that disconnect has been made much more permanent.
Sorry.
Just in terms, if you wanted to comment on the sort of what would be needed to get to a healthier place in the West Bank, but also the disconnect between the West Bank and Gaza, which I know has been for a long time, but has gotten even worse, where you can't get any connection between the two.
Of course, the Israeli violations has to stop, the confiscation of land, because more and more land is being confiscated, and more we are also living now in very, very small tiny area. Last week we heard that the area C, which represents 60% of the West Bank, will be also taken for good. And this means that there is no future, or there is no hope for future generations to grow and have a decent life or to thrive in the West Bank if the situation continues. So basically it's about ending occupation, ending the oppression, ending the confiscation of land, and having the freedom to take decisions as a Palestinian state or a Palestinian authority, because we are so much linked to the Israeli policies and Israeli decisions in our daily life. So having some autonomy. So this is basically what is needed, and everything else, including health situation, will improve. Everything is connected.
I think that one of the biggest factors where people aren't supporting Gaza is because they don't realize that there are Christians in Gaza. And I think that a lot of the hate is because people consider Muslims as other, and they think that everybody in the West Bank and in Gaza are Muslim. And I think they need a big awakening if they've ever been to Jerusalem and been spat at by people, or if they've ever been in, when I was in Hebron, we were spat at as well, visiting the different sites and knowing that we were Christian. They've recently taken over the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem as well. The Israelis have. And there's not just suppression of Muslims, but also suppressions of Christians. And you can see what's happening in Bethlehem, what happened. They bombed a hospital on Palm Sunday, which was an Anglican hospital in North Gaza. And then they wouldn't even let the Pope's representative go into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre over Easter. And so you can see what's happening, and you still have Christian groups going, all the time to Gaza to celebrate it and not really realizing what's going on there to the Christian population as well. The thing to remember, we saw this with the Holocaust, that after the Holocaust happened, people would ask their relatives, where were you during the Holocaust and why didn't you stop it? Where were you during civil rights in the United States and you didn't stop it? And where were you during the Gaza genocide and you didn't say anything or tell anybody about it? And you just need to remember that silence on this matter is complicity. And if you do not speak up and teach people, then you're complicit in killing these children and these women as well. People figure that if someone's in a hijab, somebody's covered, these are brown people, these are Muslims, they don't consider it as big a deal if they considered them Christian or if they knew that they were Christian.
Yeah, I think you're definitely touching on this importance of Islam, the role of Islamophobia, anti-Arab racism, and anti-Palestinian discrimination, which we can see are all, interconnected. And we're going to conclude. I want to just draw to people's attention. They're in the chat. There's also some ideas of how you can follow other organizations and get involved in advocacy. And CMEP right now has an action alert. If you just go to cmep.org and you press on advocacy, calling on members of Congress to support a ceasefire, de-escalation of violence, end of displacement, and a halt in weapons sales to Israel. So, of course, the U.S. has a particular role because of the amount of weapons that we provide to Israel. So thank you both. I want to turn things over to Jeff to conclude today's program.
Yeah, and thank you. We'll obviously continue to advocate for peace and justice in the Holy Land. Shireen, as you said so well, we have to get down to the root causes, and that's something we'll work for, certainly. We want to thank everybody who joined. Thank you, Shireen from Bethlehem, and thank you, Dr. Shea from California. This will be posted on the CMEP website, and I just wanted to briefly let you know about the next two sessions in this web series. On May 28th, it's Building for a Peaceful Future, the State of Education in Palestine and the Holy Land. Samuel Youssef, who's the CEO of the Latin Patriarchate, will be joining us along with a representative from Bethlehem University. And then on June 11th, our final session will be Human Rights in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, Religious Freedom, Legal Challenges, and the Status Quo. Joining us will be Raful Rufa, Director of St. Eve's Legal Society in Jerusalem, and Yusuf Daher, Jerusalem Voice for Justice. So we look forward to having them, and we look forward to having you join us at those times. So thank you, and have a blessed day.